the relationship between the self and the structure of the personality becomes most clear if we combine the vertical divisions that we talked about earlier and the horizontal or concentric ones into one diagram. We can simplify things and keep of the vertical system basically only the distinction between the mind, the vital, and the physical. There are three different types of consciousness. On the surface, the distinction is not very clear, and it is understandable why so many Western thinkers have only made a distinction between mind and body, especially in modern times, because there seems to be some parallel with the distinction between software and hardware. In us, the state of the body affects our feelings, affects our mind. Our thoughts affect our body and our emotions. And our emotions affect to quite an extent our thinking. So on the surface they are generally combined, and what we basically see mainly is the ego, which coordinates all the activities of the different parts of our nature and represents them to the outside world. It is only when we go inside that the difference between the mental plane and the vital plane become very, very clear. And it is important to make the distinction, because it is the mind which is into knowledge. It wants to know what is true, what is factual, what is real. The vital part of our nature is not interested in that. Its job is life, self-assertion, relationships, power. So it is not really bothered about what's true and false. It is very much concerned with who wins. If you go further inside, there is actually a self on the level of the mind, a self on the level of the vital, and there is a self in the body. They are in some ways the same in the sense that all of them are peaceful, all of them are joyful, all of them are fast, unperturbed. But the mental self is typically in the witness consciousness. It is from there that you can watch whatever goes on in the mind. The vital self is a center of joy and energy and is very sensitive to whatever is happening on that level. And it adds the joy and the energy to our existence. The physical self is really about the body. And sports people tend to know that, especially in, say, long distance running or swimming or something like that. Performance is much better when the mind kind of switches off and allows the body to run on its own. Then the self of the body knows exactly what to do. Behind all three, there is something that I've called here simply the soul. It is the innermost self. It is what we really are within this complex evolutionary world. Above it there is the self, which is immutable, forever the same, and in the end one with the self of everybody else. The soul is not the same for everyone. The soul is the representative of the divine in our individual life. In most people, the soul has only a very limited influence on the rest of our existence. But once you know that it is there, you can increase its presence, increase its influence, And slowly you can shift the center of your identity from that noisy ego on the surface to the presence of the soul deep inside. And the soul always has an influence that harmonizes, that increases the perfection, the intrinsic harmony between things. So, a very important part of psychological development is to become more aware of the soul's presence and allow it to influence one's nature more.